Chapter 5: A Pragmatist's Approach to Skepticism. In my attempts to be a good skeptic, I've noticed a trend. Many people proudly identify as skeptics, but most of these people only ever engaged skeptical methods in order to debunk other people's claims. I find this to be lopsided, a bias to always uphold the status quo. Somewhat ironically, these same people also often remark on the wrong-headed status quo ideas of the past. What's more, they frequently hero worship those historical intellectuals who were brave enough to say something different, which we now hold to be true. If one is truly interested in the truth of a claim, then one should be able to entertain the idea that the claim could be true before challenging it. Despite the skeptic's appeal to rationality, frequently their initial aversion to a claim is emotional. Rationality is then employed only after their minds have already been made up to try and affirm these suspicions. The studies of the famous neuroscientist Antonio Damasio have shown that people who have a type of brain damage that leaves them unable to process emotions are also left unable to form any quick decisions at all. Such people can only rationalize. Ask such a subject if they would like milk in their coffee, and they are left for a long time trying to determine the pros and cons of either option. If we only had rationality with which to make decisions, then almost nothing would get done. It is unlikely that most animals rationalize to the extent of a human being, yet animals can achieve the most amazing feats of problem solving and achievement. Consider, for instance, the complexity of a beaver dam, or a termite mound, or the intelligence of crows. There is an amazing amount of problem solving in these animal feats. In a footnote, I've recommended that you go and watch a documentary called A Murder of Crows, which came out in 2010. And it is showing how crows can outcompete apes in many problem-solving tests, which is something that we did not expect from them. One of the strangest displays of problem-solving in non-humans are the Japanese experiments by Atsushi Tero from Hokkaido University on the maze-solving capabilities of slime molds. Slime molds are, at least in appearance, a living goop, seemingly without mind or organs. Place a slime mold in the center of a maze and place a small amount of oats at the exit, and after a while, you will find that it has solved the maze. The slime mold achieves this by sending extensions out in every direction, and upon finding the food, the connecting tendril is strengthened and the others die off, leaving the perfect solution to the maze. The experiment was further extended by creating a map of Tokyo with subway stations represented by oats, and having the slime mold decide on the connections. The result was that the slime mold created a subway plan that efficiently navigated around obstacles. Its efforts compared favorably to what is possible by human engineers. I take from this that rationality is merely one of our many possible modes of problem solving. Other life forms and organizing structures are constantly solving problems all around us, and many of them do it without brains. Rationality is great for humans explaining things to other humans, but even amongst humans, it is only something we engage in with effort. When a skeptic engages with magic, they should not initially expect to find rational explanations. A magician might not be concerned with being rational at all, as long as they can achieve what they desire. Instead, the first thing a skeptic should look for is the effect of the magic. If this effect is repeatable, as good magic ought to be, then a rational explanation can be sought after the fact. A magician who produces repeatable results will oftentimes be able to do so without being able to truly explain how the magic works themselves. Too often skeptics dismiss interesting results simply because the magician can't rationalize their methods. I'd like to suggest that if the goal is really to determine what is real and what isn't, then there are a number of crucial steps to being a good skeptic. Step 1. Seek to understand what is being claimed. It's very important to establish how people use their words and to conduct any experiment based on what they mean, not on what you think they mean. People who have seen a ghost don't necessarily mean anything more than that they have had an extremely strong experience of a presence, perhaps one that they have seen. They don't necessarily mean that a ghost is real in the same way that a particular person is real. If you are expecting to find a ghost in the way that you might be able to locate someone in the flesh, then your search is quite likely to come up empty. If such a person claims that the ghost is real, then often what they mean by real is that they have had a strongly convincing subjective experience. If many people have seen a ghost, then one ought not to dismiss the experience just because nobody was able to shake the ghost's hand. If you interpret the individual's claim to mean that they had the experience of a ghost, then you can look for other ghost experiences. It's almost certain that you will find something to work with. Ghost experiences can be studied, even if ghosts cannot. Different people have very different ideas about what is real. To a born-again Christian, a vision of Jesus is one of the most real things in their life. They might well measure reality based on their strong emotional experience and overwhelming sense of meaning. Such people may be ready to concede that seeing Jesus was not the same kind of real as leaning on a table or shaking hands with somebody. Likewise, to some hardliners, such as the famous cognitive scientist Daniel Dennett, their own consciousness is not real. Dennett has claimed that both consciousness and free will are illusions caused by underlying deterministic brain function. At which point one wonders if Daniel Dennett hasn't poofed all his agency out of existence. If everything he believes and says is the result of a deterministic automation, then why should we listen to him? Step 2. Seek to learn what the claimant is experiencing. Once you have a fair idea about what they mean, then it seems to me that the bravest and most honest thing you can do in determining the truth of a claim is to attempt to have the experience yourself. This is something I suspect many self-identifying skeptics will hate. Can you try and copy the stimulus that caused the ghost experience? Can you spend a night in the same haunted building? To do this authentically might require letting go temporarily of preconceptions, prejudices, and maybe even strongly held beliefs. If one was to be skeptical about the religious practice of speaking in tongues, it might mean spending a week at an evangelical church attempting to speak in tongues before one has had an authentic, in quotes, Holy Spirit experience on par with those particular Christians. The effort one puts in counts. The skeptical testing of the experience can only happen once one knows what the experience is. Often the best way to start is to try and have the experience yourself. In order not to completely flip over to cuckoo land, I recommend setting a time period beforehand. If necessary, set on a calendar how long you will spend trying to gain the authentic experience. How long will you wear the believer's hat? When the due date arrives, if you have gained an insight into the claimant's inner experience, only then should you try and take it apart. Step 3. Apply regular skeptical techniques of analysis to what you have learned. Only now that you understand what it is you are testing for, can you expect to be able to test it without misunderstanding the claimant. In debates, there is often talk of logical fallacies. These are indeed a very good thing to study if one wishes to navigate truth claims. But if one wishes to really get to the bottom of something, then there's no point in looking for logical fallacies until one has applied what is often referred to as the principle of charity. The principle of charity explains that if one is serious about a debate that leads to a constructive resolution, then one should first help the claimant articulate their argument. You should work together to understand exactly what it is they are trying to explain. A good technique is to repeat back to them what you think it is they mean, and then have them correct you until you both agree. Brett Weinstein, a prominent evolutionary biologist and internet commentator, has come up with his own popular term for this, steel manning. That is, the opposite of the straw man fallacy. The straw man is where one redefines an opponent's argument and then attacks that new definition, rather than their actual claim. Straw manning can be a good technique for propaganda, but not for establishing the truth. Step 4. Play with the experience. Let's say you now have had your own genuine ghost experience that is comparable to that of the claimant. If possible, discuss it with them to make sure you both agree that the experience counts. Then and only then, you should try and find the limits to the experiment. Can you have the same experience summoning Elvis or Santa Claus? Can you induce the same religious emotions that a Christian has during speaking in tongues towards Mickey Mouse rather than Jesus? Clearly, these experiments should be conducted away from judgment, lest one be crucified for blasphemy or otherwise cause upset. This step, however, is very important for understanding what is actually going on, so bravery is required here. At this step, it is reasonable to be irreverent in one's approach. Only through manipulating the experiment in various ways can we expect to learn which parts produce the experience and which don't. Some, after all, claim to be moved by the spirit of Elvis in the same way that Christians can be moved by the spirit of Jesus. At which point does the experience become something else? I have tried these steps myself when challenged by a magician friend, Karen McKenzie, to try some hands-on magic. Karen is an experienced fortune teller specializing in palm reading, tarot, and I Ching. For a long time, Karen and I would drive out to bars, and he would read palms or give tarot readings to strangers we would meet, while I would observe. Sometimes 10 people in an evening would have their fortune read by Karen. I measured his success by establishing if the person had had a genuine uncanny experience, that he knew more about them than should be possible. I've had many readings from Karen myself, where I try to induce different outcomes by asking different sorts of questions, and by being forthcoming or withholding information from him. He was one of the first magicians I met who delivered interesting results. Finally, he suggested that if I was to learn anything more, I should learn some fortune telling myself. I took this challenge by learning tarot divination with the popular Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I used his explanations, as well as tarot literature and internet resources, to write myself a tarot reading manual. We then discussed the manual and improved it over time until we were both happy with it. I started reading for friends, acquaintances, and strangers at parties, something which I still enjoy doing. After practice, with Karen's guidance, I have always seemed to deliver results, even when the querent is a devoted skeptic. I have since exchanged readings with many other fortune tellers, some of whom have been excellent and some of whom, as one might expect, have been less than successful. Upon reaching the level where I started to induce the same uncanny experience in the querent as Karen does, I then started to play with the limits of the tarot. In this, I discovered some interesting things about my tarot readings. The tarot can function very well as a counseling technique. The querent usually goes away with a strong feeling of having been taken seriously and listened to, as well as feeling like they have more clarification and often even a new approach to a life problem they were previously confused about. The tarot can provide a very plausible, useful narrative for what is going on emotionally in one's life, especially if it's something they have previously had difficulty in articulating. The readings work well regardless of whether the querent is giving feedback during the reading or not. The tarot, disappointingly, does not reliably predict sports results or winning lottery numbers. The tarot with effort can predict the interactions between characters in a movie or TV show that I'm watching for the first time. It helps one to be aware of major plot points and character motivations, and very often before they are fully revealed in the show. At one time at a party, I had been doing some readings when a friend of a friend who I didn't know very well asked, "Can I do a bullshit reading with the cards just for fun?" He was the jokester type, and I later found out, a comedian, but I enjoyed his challenge and decided to raise the stakes. Sure you can, but wouldn't it be more interesting if you used the manual I made here and tried your best to do a good reading? He took me up on the challenge and did a reading for his friend. Neither he or his friend had any experience with the tarot, and he himself expected it to be bunkum. So they were both very surprised and enthusiastic when the reading worked very well. Something about the rules of tarot as a game can work, even when the participants don't believe in it. To me, magic that doesn't rely on belief is the most interesting kind. Another time at a different party, I did a reading for a self-proclaimed rationalist materialist. Again, he went in with all bullshit detectors firing, eager to trip me up. By the end, he was literally pacing back and forth, muttering, "This shouldn't be happening," unable to decide if he was spooked or exhilarated. My current theory on how the tarot works is that it is a narrative game. The Rider-Waite cards are specific enough to build a solid and singular storyline, yet they are just general enough that they can be applied to any situation as long as the reader is creative enough. This is why, once he was given the explanations of the individual cards, the quick-witted comedian was able to give a good reading. Tarot doesn't very often give black and white yes or no answers. This is why something as specific as a sports result or lotto numbers won't work. Despite my efforts to rationalize it, there is also a genuine feeling of tuning in that one experiences as a fortune teller. This feeling helps one tap into emotional and intuitive types of decision making. As a fairly rational type thinker, my fortune-telling experiments have given me a glimpse of the inner world of the intuitive type of person. If I had remained critical of this intuitive feeling throughout the experimentation, then I wouldn't have gained a personal understanding of it. I think being open to this feeling is part of what makes the tarot reading work, even if there were nothing psychic about it. It could be as little as tapping into the right state of imagination to bring the story out of the cards, a type of flow state. There's something similar going on when I improvise music. Very quick decisions must be made. It's less important that one decision be more correct than another, and more important that the decisions are made quickly enough not to interrupt the flow of the musical performance, or in the case of the tarot, the narrative performance. Because intuitive decision-making is hard to pin down, there really is an uncanny feeling that goes along with fortune-telling. I sometimes get an inspiration that feels like it's come out of the ether. I'm certain this is the same type of experience that people who engage with psychic phenomena are describing. For now, I'm quite happy to put this into the I don't know basket, though I hope to have an explanation one day. If we were to combine all that I have so far discussed in previous chapters into a practice, I would call this practice Pragmatic Magical Thinking. In further chapters, I will explain this approach in higher detail and explore some of the reasons why magic frequently works and the different kinds of magic available to us. If you have enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. You can purchase a copy of my book in the link available in the video description. Thank you very much.